All right, we're live.
There we go. Okay. All right, it is 7:03 and we'll call this meeting of the Old Saybrook Board of Education to order, and we'll start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, all right, we will start with our audience of citizens. If there is any, there aren't any present in the room, but is there anybody logged in? Okay. All right, so then we will move over to our reports from our student board reps.
Hi. Okay, so. First of all, clubs. So number one, DECA, which I talked about a couple months ago. This is a new club that we started this year, the Marketing and Business Club. They have a field trip coming up. It's gonna be next Friday. I think on here it says 22nd, but it's actually been moved to the 24th. And they're going to Main Street and they're gonna go to a couple local businesses like Sweet Luna's and stuff and kind of speak to their managers and just kind of figure out what really goes into the marketing and the business aspect of like actual businesses. And they're all very excited for that. A newfound club, the Disc Golf Club. Students are very excited and they're having a great time with this. Also participating in ping pong during free periods. They're loving that as well. And then finally Rambler is finalizing its May edition. Its April edition, they had two, so they had a real April edition and they gave out one on April Fool's Day, which they do every year, and it's absolutely hilarious. So then moving on to the academics, our AP tests began on the 6th, and they're continuing throughout the rest of this week. I know today was AP Lang, which I think students did not love. It was hard. But about the AP testing. Health classes are planning a field trip to Goodwin. So Goodwin has its wellness day coming up, and a lot of the high school students are splitting up into groups and maybe teaching and guiding student like lessons throughout the wellness day activities. And all of our activities are like almost like 99% booked. Like the teachers at Goodwin are really loving this idea and they're really loving us, like being able to go down there and talk to them and help these students. I think it's gonna be a really great day. Some of the topics are like how to be a good sport. I know there's people doing fire safety. There's some people. It's gonna be really great. I'm very excited. Capstone presentations are coming soon. So the gallery walk is on Thursday, and that's for English in Action and News Media and Ask students, and that's where they present their capstones to all the parents who want to come in or anyone else who just wants to stop by. And then the presentations themselves, where every student has to present their capstone, is on the 21st to the 22nd. And then finally, students are really beginning to feel the anticipation for finals because the end of the year is rapidly approaching. I think we only have like 20 something days left in school, and stay in school.
All right, and then for extracurriculars, underclassmen awards are coming up. So the underclassmen, and that includes juniors. So the freshmen, sophomores, and juniors who are being invited have all, for the most part, received their letters or their emails or whatever. So they are ready for that. And then senior awards night already happened and seniors really enjoyed that.
We have another one too.
Yeah.
On June, I want to say 3rd. Like that, maybe the 4th.
I think it is one of those 2 days.
I think it's in June. I think it's. Maybe, I think it was sports awards.
Yes. Oh, yeah, sports awards, yeah. And then the cancer walk happened on May 3rd, and that was a huge success, a huge hit. So many people went. Personally, I wasn't able to make it, but were you there?
I was not able to make it. I was working at Sweet Luna's, but everybody came in after, so that was great.
Everybody loved it. It was a huge hit. They raised over $10,000. And people played games, they walked the track, they ate food, they had ton of sponsorships from like local businesses. It was just really a
Around the track itself.
Yeah. And then prom was this past Saturday and people loved it. So this is great, especially compared to last year where this wasn't really the consensus, but people loved prom this year. People loved the food was so good. The venue was great. It was super nice. The music was good. People just had a really good time and it was a success for sure. And yeah, I think overall it was just a lot of positive feedback from prom. And then band and chorus 1 just had their spring concert, and then band and chorus 2 are having their spring. This is the concert for they call it, like the Rose concert. It's just like they do like a ceremony every year for the seniors since that is their last band or chorus concert. And then band's also preparing to be in the Memorial Day parade. And then for sports, golf is not doing good in general, but compared to usual, they are doing well. They beat HK, who had a record of 8-0, so they beat an undefeated team. And then boys tennis is definitely struggling this year. I think they had a hard time finding players and generating a team, but at this point, their record than this. They have a record of 6-7, and I think it might be higher than that because I think they won a couple of matches over the past few days.
I know they had one today.
They had one today. I think they won one yesterday also. So they've been doing pretty well. And then track has had a great season so far. They've had a lot of students winning awards. I know Carly Castro won an award for being a distance runner. You can probably talk.
Yeah, so Carly just beat the school record for the 2-mile. She ran under 12 minutes for a 2-mile. I think she ran an 11:47. It is like
That's like
actually
insane.
crazy,
Like that.
insane, and I just don't think I could ever even fathom that, but.
And then Lauren Dovax beat the school record for 100-meter hurdles.
Yeah, I think she either broke 15 or was like on 15, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, so a lot of great athletes on that team this year, and they're doing really well. They had Running Rams, which was an Old Saybrook annual invitational meet. There were 30 schools. It was crazy. And they also had senior night. And then Shorelines and States are approaching, as well as
So the heptathlon is a 2-day track meet, I guess, and it's only for heptathletes, and you have to participate in 7 events. So it's long jump, high jump, 800, 100, shot put, javelin, and hurdles, I think. Maybe I already said hurdles. I don't know. There's 7 events and they're all like a wide range, and every athlete has to compete in all 7 of those. And to win, you have to like score the most points throughout the 2 days. But I know graduate our heptathletes are not sure what they're gonna do.
And then for crew, they've been doing pretty well this season. They did have a regatta the morning after prom. They had to be up at 6 a.m. So people weren't too happy about that. But overall, they have been having a good season. They're combined with Valley, of course. So I think Valley is doing pretty well also. And then boys lacrosse is having a great season. They've had a lot of exciting games, a lot of really close games, a lot of games going into overtime or like being like a 1-point difference. But their current record is 12-2. And then girls and is very impressive since they had so much trouble finding or putting together a team this year. And it's mainly made up of freshmen and sophomores, I believe. And Ayla Deanna, a junior on the girls lacrosse team, is nominated for Athlete of the Week. So go vote for Ayla for Athlete of the Week. And then baseball is also having a pretty difficult season. Their current record is 4-11. They had their senior night tonight. I'm not sure how that game went or if they won or lost, but I think people enjoyed senior night. And then softball, just qualified for states. Their 8th win was actually a forfeit by Portland because they didn't have enough players to field the game. But They are qualified for states, we are qualified for shorelines, and this is really great, especially since this did not happen last year at all. Not even close. And then senior night was last night. Against a team that we did beat 2 times before, but the actual ceremony was very nice. And we got to honor our 2 seniors. So yeah, overall, it went pretty well, and that's it.
Okay, thank you so much. That was an amazing report by both of you. Any questions?
Yeah. No, and just a comment, I feel the need to do a special shout out about the cancer walk, because my husband and I we walked, had the pleasure of meeting the 2 kids the 2 students that organized it, and unfortunately, I can't think of their names.
Carter Casella.
Yes.
Parker Cook.
Yes. Lots of activities, lots of games, lots of spirit, lots of walkers. It was really a great night. And the fact that they raised so much money, really impressive. It was just nice to see that activity come back and have been gone for obvious reasons of COVID for many years. And, years ago, it was a kind of a staple activity at the high school. So for these kids to bring them back, it was great. And the fact that they raised so much money was incredible. So kudos to them and all the kids and parents and the teachers and staff, so a lot of staff that participated. It was really a fun night, so.
It was really incredible.
And very well organized too.
Yeah.
They've been advertising it since like January.
Months
They
everywhere.
did a great job.
So where's the prom?
Prom was at Wadsworth Mansion in Midtown, which was beautiful. People love weddings there. Like, it was really nice.
Just wanted to say the terrific report as well, and just wanted to share that National School Board Association did an article on students a seat at the board table. So I'm just going to read something very short, and then I'll ask maybe Trent if he can make the article for you. Basically, students that can offer the larger school community the opportunity to see a transparent, accountable form of government. And really, they're talking about student voice. And so we've done it for many years here. And some states don't actually have students on their school boards, but just to know that your information is extremely good from your perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on to correspondence. Karen.
We do have a bit of correspondence. The Board of Education has been invited to the 2024 in the evening, which is the electric boat cohort, the 5 students that were offered positions. So anyway, there's a thing you can scan here and get all the information on it, but it's quite an honor. So that's going to come around to us.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have the meeting minutes from April 30th with a motion to approve those if we have one.
So moved.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Steve. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to our first presentation on the literacy program. So Dr. Buckman and Dr. Wood.
All right, so as you are aware, the state mandated us to choose some particular programs to choose from for our literacy program. And this year they have been piloting their literacy program in the elementary school. So Dr. Fletcher is going to be here to share some of the information that they gathered and the results from that pilot.
Yep, I'm back. Good evening, everyone. Bye. All year long, if we finally collected enough information and had enough implementation to actually make a decision with our working group. So this is here to provide the rationale behind the decision that we made to move forward with the program that we selected for the 24-25 school year. And as we know, this is all coming from the Right to Read Act. So we are mandated to make a selection of 1 of 6 programs, and even after the waiver process commenced, they built a compendium where they had select
you are in a situation like we are in Saybrook and receive the transitional waiver, then you could choose and mix and match different programs to meet the need to make you whole and not transition. So of course, all of the plan that we are trying to come forward with is really trying to think back to this. So we felt inside of our working group that was important to outline, not just for the board, but for all of our stakeholders, how we actually got here. And everything that went into this piece of it. So June 21, they passed the Right to Read Act. So then the fall, under Dr. Goss, she actually started the ball rolling and looking to see what resources or programs we should be looking in that would fit our beliefs and practices here in Saybrook. December, she worked that whole fall and completing the waiver process, working with our ELA, ILT member, Eric Yale. And then in the spring, I was here to help the team survey a couple of the programs. Now, straight away, we had to eliminate 3 due to the NYU report that came out saying that 3 of them were culturally destructive. And that didn't feel right to put those in front of our teacher for review. And we have a body of research on that. And now we need to move forward from that. From there, we were able to look at 2 programs, the American Reading Company core literacy program, as well as Amplified. The differences between the 2 are has more of a framework that embodies a lot of the changes that we see in the science of reading, where Amplified of the science of reading components, and that's why they were on the state's list. But the difference was that was a more scripted program. Every lesson was scripted out for teachers, less flexibility, less choice, more turn to page X, do what says, say prompt. The art program provided more of a framework that our teachers could work inside of, and I can't skip over this, real books. Real books that we could put in kids' hands, we could put additional books in kids' hands. So we have more choice and flexibility with that. And we with feedback on both of those programs, and they selected the art program to look at. So continuing with how we got here, June 2023, we want to be very systematic in how we structured this approach, even in terms of the professional learning that we provided. We had Chris Lehman come in from the Educator Collaborative straight away. And also he has been with us all school year long. We also contracted with ARC itself so that they would come in and provide their series of professional learning for our teachers so they could see how the program. Throughout this school year, we had 10 classrooms implementing the ARC program. 2 for each grade level. We wanted to be very systematic with that as well. We didn't want any one teacher at any one grade level feeling like they were an island. We wanted them to have a partner teacher that they could communicate with, discuss challenges, and then that group could come back in our professional learning series, whether it was with Chris Lehman or with the ARC facilitators, and they could bring those problems of practice and we can discuss that as a group and build our capacity that way. So all of this has been ongoing. And we were already collecting focus group data from our teachers, trying to discover what was working and what we struggling with. At the same time, Superintendent Ferruccio and myself were still meeting with the State Department of Ed to say, hey, you know, we received this transitional waiver, and we appeal this, and there was no process in place, and we still haven't seen the process, and we've heard different narratives about different backroom communications that are happening amongst legislators and but nothing has come out of that, so according to the statute, we have to implement one of those 6 programs or one of the programs listed in the compendium for the 24-25 school year. So knowing that, having the pilot and having something that we were actually testing out works in our favor because we at least had a test year under our belt to see if this program could be something we worked with. This is something that we've been of our group, the collective teacher, and knowing that we're to build our capacity and build our beliefs that we can positively influence regardless of any changes to curriculum, because we know that we can do what's in the best interest of our students here in Saybrook. And we see the effective size and how meaningful that is to student achievement. And we're trying to really leverage that point as we're moving forward and learning something new. But we weren't just going with, and if you could move to the next slide, Sharon, we weren't just going with the idea that we pilot anything or blindly pilot it just because the state told us to. We wanted to make sure that we were really intentional around what questions we were trying to have answered inside of this process. And what we're really trying to get to was trying to see what could we do to effectively build meaning making for our readers and for our writers anytime they're inside of that LA block. Same thing, like what is the instructional times that we need to be effective in helping our students achieve their literacy goals? And then what is allow us to do that? So that was our questions that the working group came up with and that we put into play and that we started with as we started to implement this process. Because everything we're trying to do comes back to this idea that we're providing high quality instruction for our students every day, every period, every class. So with the literacy testing materials and looking at the ARC pilot, we're thinking about just that. And this is something that we're coming to inside of our heuristic for next year. Really focus still on this idea that we can improve our instruction. We could do it with the knowledge and power that we have inside of our district. So that's something that we are still trying to leverage. So as we start to collect feedback from our teachers, these were a lot of the benefits that they were telling us existed from the ARC program. They were saying that it's a framework, it's not scripted. So now we get to rely on our teachers' expertise. There was quality literature. I think I mentioned in a few board meetings ago about the amount of personal dollars that have come out of my own wallet to Amazon books to get additional series for my own kids who are experiencing the pilot, that there's daily interactive read aloud, the vocabulary was great. Kids were having extended reading periods and they were inside of these texts. But I also wanted to mention the idea that they were stressing to us around the challenges. Like there's a transitional gap. And I highlighted that idea around the transitional gap because that's going to exist no matter where we go. We were doing one program, we switched it to something completely different. New programs, unless they're built by that publisher, are going to create a gap for us. But our teachers were aware of that and they were bringing that up. And I want to bring that to you because that is something that was stated. The way that ARC talks about the standards, they really align them to be specific to their units that they're creating. And sometimes they lose the core of the standard that comes from Common Core. The graphic organizers weren't really well developed. Rubrics were kind of questionable with their alignment to the standards. And then there was a lack of a common assessment with exemplars. So it left some room, but again, it was a framework. And that's how they left a lot of teacher choice and teacher autonomy inside of their package. So what this all came down to, go to the next one. Change is hard. It's really hard. And that's what we felt all year long, like, this is hard. And why is this change hard? Because this change didn't come from our teachers. This change didn't come from our scores. This change didn't come internally. This change came from the state down. So that adds another level of complexity to the adaptation and implementation of this. So we are trying to adapt to these changes while recognizing that, yeah, this is gonna be hard work for us to go through. But one thing that we were mindful of is, well, was this detrimental change for our students? And that's what these next few slides are going to look at, some of our scores of implementation. Now, typically, when you implement anything, more often than not, you'll see your score. Because it's a learning year and it's a learning curve for the teachers. Sometimes you may see the opposite, the inverse, where they'll like skyrocket and then drop. With this, we didn't necessarily see a massive increase in scores, nor did we see a plummet in our scores. And then scores we're talking about are DIBEL and the STAR scores. So looking at a middle of year to middle of year, we wanted to go back and look at all of the grade levels, like when our third graders were in second grade, when our current third graders were first, and when they were in K. And as you can see, we've had a steady increase. And even with the implementation during this 23-24 school year, we still see that our students are improving. And we keep increasing the number of students who are at or above grade level. Same thing. We look at our stuff. We see an increase with in all of our grade levels from the fall benchmark screener to the winter screener. Same thing when we look at winter to winter from 23 to 24. Because we wanted to be able to say like, okay, well, where were our students? If we were looking just like year to year, how well did our students do last year when we were just doing our own curriculum versus when our students are doing the ARC curriculum?
Question about this. Because I was looking forward to having this interpreted, because I couldn't interpret it on my own.
Sure.
So this is saying that in first grade, in the winter of 23, 24 of 50 students were at or above grade level in the STAR assessment.
Yes.
And it increased in the winter of 2024, the percentage increase, because we have greater numbers.
Yeah.
That's how, okay.
Yeah. 100%.
Can I time out? So it's different. So there were only 50 kids in 23, 61 kids in 24. Are showing up in the grade 2 at 62%.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it goes down.
No.
Or down,
You go
yeah.
forward.
Oh, the arrows.
yeah,
The arrows.
Forward.
yeah, okay, yeah, okay, so yeah,
Forward again.
okay, yep.
So grade 1 became grade 2.
Yeah.
So
So that's how you see the increase when you're talking about the cohort of actual students.
yes.
Performing better.
So that's why I want to include the green arrows as well.
Yeah.
Because you'll be able to see the cohort of students and see how they travel from one year to the next. But when we're just over time. So we're just saying, okay, last year, these 50 students performed like this at the middle of the year with that curriculum. Now we're looking at the next year, these 61 students performed like this with this curriculum. But when I look at that cohort to see if there was any increase in performance now that they're engaging in a new curriculum, we can see how those students, as they travel from grade 1 to grade 2, are performing.
Are you all set or?
Yeah, I have a question. which grades does this apply to, the program?
So we have the art program in all grades except for ECP. So it's K-4,
K through 4.
yes.
So, just a couple more follow-on questions. Would you naturally see an increase? Like, again, following the green arrows, the color, because I think that's meaningful, but would you expect to see an increase? Like, you wouldn't expect it to be static from grade 1 to grade 2, right? Because they're maturing, they're getting more challenging. You know, is cohort reflective of the art, you know, the use of the new curriculum? And then my related question is grades 2 and 3 actually showed a decline, not cohort wise, right? Not following the videos, but just horizontally.
So, okay. I don't want to hang I don't want to hang my hat on the fact that like art is a new savior.
Right, yeah,
Cause
no,
I don't, like, that would be disingenuous of me to say that, right? We do expect that from year to year, that students are making growth. Just like on the previous slide, where we looked at the fall to the winter, we expect to see a level of growth with our students. And we even expect to see, because right now, we're only pointing to the students who are at or above grade level. We also expect to see growth with our students who would be in the red for that urgent intervention, the intermediate intervention, and the students who are right below the yellow or the blue, I think is a color where they call on watch. We expect to see throughout the year that all of those students are increasing inside of their performance, or that we're providing some level of intervention to aid them inside of their achievement. So we always want to see that. The reason why I want to include the green arrow is because when we look at grade 3, it does look like a massive drop from 78% to 69%. But then that those students didn't start at the same level as those students when winter 23. So those students are actually increasing now that they're in grade 3 in winter 24. Because last winter, when they were in second grade, they were only showing up at 67% at or above. And now they're showing up at 69% at or above in the winter. So it's important to look at that from a cohort view too, because then it ends up like that year when Dr. Goss was looking at and was and that outlier year took place. And then it was like, well, this year we were really high, but we can't expect that this is what our expectation will be from here on out. And our scores don't reflect that one outlier year. So we don't know if that's an outlier year or outlier pocket of students who are traveling, but we do know that they are growing because when we look at them in fourth grade, they went from 78% to 83%. So it's a way to interpret, but there's other factors inside. And why is this group growing like this? And why are other groups not?
I think to the first part of your question, Karina, too, like the standards are changing year to year, so any that's just like growing because they're just getting bigger and maturing and it would be addressed by the shift in the expectation bar for the standards. But I was trying to think of the same thing, and that's why it's important to look at it in cohorts. I think also to keep in mind is we're only at 50% of ARC adoption, right? With these numbers, we're not at full-blown ARC adoption, so.
But this reflects all students?
This reflects all students,
right.
because if we have broken this out by classrooms who are implementing, and we did take a brief look at that, and there was no discernible difference between our classrooms that were implementing
No,
our
come on.
I-
Wow.
testing is on the call as well.
Okay.
So it was there, and I'm not making this up. We
Okay.
were able to look at our Dibble scores and say, okay,
Hmm.
let's mark the classrooms that are actually implementing ARC and the ones that are not. And there was no big difference in terms of our classrooms that activity in that, like, okay, there's not a big change. And then part of the conversation that we had was that, well, when I come to this board before, talking about our accountability index, I said that we were generally flat. And Superintendent Ferruccio was like, yeah, our scores are reflecting that we're relatively flat. So as we are in our working group meeting, analyzing the data, I said, guys, if we pull back on this, we see that we're relatively flat. And this is not just reflective of this change, it's reflective of our performance. And one of our teachers in the group was also at the instructional practices that's going to allow us to move forward. And I could have joked. So, and I would have said to her, oh, Cap, my Cap, because that's what I was feeling. But she said it, not I, so I guess we'll go that way.
Can I ask a question just about the actual, like, how the classroom is, like, you know, it's been a long time since I've been to a first grade classroom. Are the classrooms pretty much set up with the same old books that you've been seeing there for forever, you know, where they can, you know, pick the book out of the box and read along and?
We do have our core text or the mentor text that teachers are using for their read alouds for their comprehension instruction. Students have, and we were able to get a lot, and that's one of the beauties of this pilot is that one of the selling points that he told us was that even if you don't select it, you're gonna have a bunch of great books that kids can just read. So we have outfitted all 10 of those classrooms with classroom libraries that kids are going in, and they're all color coded using students buying books that will help them grow and that will help them practice their reading skills. So there are a lot of authentic books that students are in and out of, as well as the books that teachers are using for their instruction.
Is that every classroom or is that?
That's
art
all of the classrooms that are piloting art.
Okay,
That is what's happening.
okay, all right. So there might be more books in those classes than there are in the other classes. Okay, but
Yes.
that'll be even out next.
Yes, because we've added the art classroom libraries to it.
Great.
Just a quick. Oh, yeah, agree. So how do teachers manage that challenge of that, you know, transitioning to a new program and the obvious gap that you're going to face? And how long does that typically affect? You know, the transition into the new program? I mean, when does that all level out? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And I think that it really will level out with our implementation plan.
Okay.
So one thing that we know is about 50% of the school has already transitioned into the art program. So those teachers have a year to have the other teachers onboarding, but they won't onboard at the same level that these 10 piloting teachers have implemented this school year. They definitely have a tougher job because they had to come in blind. Now we have a year of experience. If approved by this board, then we would be able to structure a plan that would allow us to utilize the knowledge of those 10 teachers to build a better implementation guide. That will help as more of a stopgap so that we're not going or reliving the same. There's a gap here. We'll already be supplementing with the materials that we have or reworking some of the organizational structures to mitigate that gap.
Great, if you go back about 2 slides or so, you had mentioned one of the drawbacks was graphic organizers are not developmentally appropriate as feedback from the Goodwin staff. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. The easiest way to explain that is that the art may come out of their English composition college course That's what I would like in this too, because some of the things that they were asking our students to do were well above the standard. Like in a third grade classroom, students are typically asked to point out the protagonists and the antagonists of the story. They're usually asked like, who is the character and how does this character change over time? But some of the language inside of the graphic organizer was very complex. It was, and not one who complex language, and our students were negotiating that complex language. But that language that's in the graphic organizer isn't necessarily helpful or necessary to teach the skill that's listed in the standard. So if they've gone above and beyond with the language, now we're looking to say, we don't need this level. Like, it's not doing our students any favors because now it's adding an extra layer of vocabulary that we're gonna have to scale back on to get to the heart of what's at that skill. So that's the same thing that we were talking about in terms of the rubrics with the standards were so heavily drenched in the content. Like there was one standard that was asking so deeply about sea life and fish that you would think that kids needed to walk away knowing what a fish was, like what a fish does, all of the anatomy of the fish, when that's not the skill of the reading program. It's getting to the skill of reading through the content, not the content that will mix the skill in. So it was trying to really refocus us on, well, this is what the standard says. What is it? Our students to get to the scale and practice their reading.
You don't have to use it, is that the flexibility? You
That's
don't
the
need to use that.
flexibility. And as we talked with the reps, like Matt Rear from Art, he was like, this is the beauty of it. It's a framework.
Mhm.
It's a guide. You're not
Okay.
forced into it. And that's part of the beauty of this program is we can use a lot of the instructional methods, but we do have flexibility to use our own knowledge to build the graphic organizers that meet the standard.
Yeah, well, one more thing about, it. Yes. I didn't see the thing that there, I wasn't sure how much, like how far back.
So kindergarten, we can see the kindergarten reflection inside the Dibble score,
Mhm.
but not so much inside of the star. So you won't
Right.
see it in the star screener because the kindergarten class takes a different version of the screener,
Right.
so it doesn't correlate. And that's why if you look at that other slide,
Mhm.
it looks like there's so few students in first grade. It was only out of 44. It's like, where are the rest of our kids? Because then it bumps up to C1. Yep, 61. So it's like, where do our students go? It's the difference in the testing. Because the students aren't at a specific level in the fall, the test shuts off
Okay.
and it doesn't capture their score.
But the art program is in effect for kindergartners. Okay, all right. And you've got X number, half the classrooms are already in it for kindergarten. Okay, I just want to make sure, just because we, I thought you said that, but.
Just very briefly. You mentioned this pre. Instruction look like,
So this is K-4.
oh, K to 4, okay, I thought you said pre-K, okay.
Yeah. So we're,
That
art
makes more sense.
does not
Okay.
go into our ECP program,
Okay, good,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah, it's a great report. Question is that our existing program was really suitable. It was excellent. And so we are now embarking on this art program to fill in because we're mandated to find a program. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And so do you need to justify any of this back to the state as to
They're not looking for a justification to that. They're looking for us to have a selection of,
And so my last question is, What's an IRLA? What does that stand for?
So the IRLA is the independent reading level assessment. It's the assessment that allows teachers to sit side by side with students. Student reads the same text, the teacher's coding the text, and it helps the teacher determine comprehension level as well as independent reading level.
So basically, report cards don't change. We're doing a different way of approaching or enhancing what we already have.
Because with our report cards, we're already using a standard-based grading system. Standards are still the same, standards are still being worked on, it just may change the scope and sequence. And where a standard may be assessed in a year. But the actual standard that's being assessed will not change.
Is that a popular program that's being adopted on Shoreline, do you know?
There is a variety of programs that some of the programs that we did not look at are even being adopted because there's other information out, but different schools are selected based on what they feel is best for their population.
And how were our parents made aware of this particular change?
So because it had not been adopted, we have not sent anything out yet, but since the start of this, we have sent communications home. I've sent a letter at the start of the year letting parents know that we were piloting this and if their student was in one of those classrooms. And now we'll have more of that communication forward.
So it's a blend.
It is a blend. Go past that. This is just another slide looking at grade 4 because grade 4 doesn't do dibbles, but we've had a lot of time talking about their performance as well when they're in grade 3. Keep going.
Can I ask a question? And I so apologize because I know we're holding you up on your presentation, but I was curious about this because this is grade 4 tracking from second grade
Yep.
to the fourth grade.
Yep.
Are those the same 3 individuals? Right, because there are 3 people in each year that are below the, whatever that, they're in urgent. It looks like these numbers aren't changing much year to year for this cohort. And so I don't know, I mean, that's right, that's a little. I don't know. I don't know how to formulate the question, but it's, wow.
Other factors that this program's not going to be able to address that allows them.
Or that our previous program didn't address, and so, you know.
One thing that I can go back to is that it is something that because it does allow us to look at some of our instructional practices, the practices that we've put in place and see what practices may need to be tweaked. What practices were we not doing at all? And the science of reading is asking us to do. So it does give us an opportunity to be extremely reflective on the practices. That's it. So the continuous improvement, the literacy testing group found that there was a lot of strength inside of the collaborative aspect of the program. So we did have that, and it was a positive. To have reasonable fidelity, and that was an ongoing challenge for us throughout the year because we were treating this as if this was a scientific study, which it's not. We were trying to figure out more of what does it mean to implement art in Saybrook using a framework and making instructional choices where we have the flexibility to do so. The core program stated that it is a framework, and that's what I was just saying, so we do get use our expertise. And finally, it's an opportunity for us to look at the instruction. The ideas and also see what are some other things that we can do while using authentic tests. So building our effective efficacy of the board does improve this program for us. We will build out the rest of this plan to really be systematic and thoughtful of how our teachers will engage in this work, how our teachers will make sense of it. But also how we'll provide the support and learning around the changes that need to happen. We'll also develop an onboarding for our teachers. Outside of the literacy materials testing group by providing opportunities for curriculum writing, create new graphic organizers or look at research-based graphic organizers that will allow us to really get part of the standard the implementation, but then also look at some of the guides that we can create to mitigate the gap and develop a professional learning plan for this coming school year.
Is there any other support? So with the pilot, we put some like belt and suspenders around it for outside support outside of the district, right? And the two different mechanisms that do we feel like we're in a position where we feel like we can successfully kind of use like a train the trainer model now? Or do we feel like there's still additional support that will be needed for the staff that will be going into the first implementation round?
So I feel like there's still some support that will be needed, especially knowing that we're building this out. We have a whole group who's coming on board. And then also just finalizing the idea around reasonable fidelity and the changes in instruction that this calls for. There was a lot of positive feedback around having the educator collaborator in the building, because that kind of helped us see what this actually looked like in more of a way that any teacher who is onboarding this as a process would be able to see, okay, what would this look like in my classroom? And not so much from the standpoint of, hey, I'm here to sell you some wares. And let me just show you this regardless of how you're feeling about it. So I capacity, and I think at the end of the 24-25 school year, we'll be in a better position to determine if we have the capacity to move forward with the internal knowledge that we have.
Thank you. The great presentation, and you've done such a wonderful job of piloting and learning, and so that's tremendous. So there are 10 teams. The pilot, how many that now need to be trained up to be able to, feel like they can do this effectively or with the supports that we have in place?
I think we're about, there's 6 to 8
Okay.
teachers.
So there's some work to be done.
Yes.
To really get them in a position where they're comfortable and understand all that, the change, right? There's a transition gap that we might be facing.
And just getting them to see like, here is just what this new thing looks like.
Yeah,
I
never
think
mind.
that is the first part,
Yeah.
before we even talk about like the instructional shifts.
Yeah,
It's just getting them from. Here's what it looks like, and don't get too comfortable with what's in the package, because we're gonna put it all.
so when will that happen? Like, when will, right, they have to be ready, on convocation, right?
Yeah.
To start. So is there, how do we prepare them?
So. If. The teacher,
If we prove it,
then we will start this process as soon as possible. And I will be back on the phone with our representatives to see when they can be back in this. We have a couple of professional learning days that I suspended with them as we're building more of the idea around reasonable fidelity, because the piloting group was saying, we don't need this group, we need the collaborative. And they were finding more success in that, and they were saying, we just need more time to play with these ideas. So I suspended that, and I said, this is approved, I'll call you back. We'll figure out how we're going to just introduce this to the staff. Also, in June, we have a curriculum writing institute. We would be looking to leverage the knowledge of those teachers who piloted during that time period. Way we can implementation guides with our teachers who would be onboarding, as well as giving them online access to all of the other materials that we would have purchased.
And then I just have a couple of other questions. You referred to real books and culturally destructive. That 3 of the 6 programs were identified as being culturally destructive.
Yes.
So I appreciate that you weeded those out right away. But what sort of feedback, is there feedback to our state legislators to say, hey, thanks for picking the 6 programs, but guess what? 3 of them are culturally destructive.
The study has been shared with them immensely, and of course, public publishers have been doing everything they could to kind of try to backtrack from those and say like, well, they've only looked at this stuff that was on print. But if you look at our online resources, then you'll see that we're not destructive. So, yeah, we've been sharing, this has been
Okay,
communicated
good, yeah.
out, so
And there
we've been
was
trying to.
Yeah, and so I think I just had the aha moment of what Real Books is versus, is it online for the other programs?
No, so when I'm seeing Real Books versus, I should provide the terms of tax, and they'll stick them inside of one giant book, and then you have this massive workbook that you'll flip through. And then you're reading this excerpt that comes from a book, or you're reading a story, but it's inside of this other big workbook. So rather than having an anthology that students are now working inside of, made of several stories, now you have an actual text that a author wrote, because sometimes those are not written by real authors, they're just written for the purposes of completing a skill or.
They're probably written by anyone.
Even on highway.
Is there anything that's needed from the board tonight?
Approval.
So motion, make a motion that we approve the ARC. Second.
Motion seconded by Jack. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much for your
Thank you for your presentation.
Next is our strategic plan goals update.
Okay, so as we've done throughout the year, we wanted to update you on where each building and each department is moving forward. As you know, the work of all the buildings, including central office, has been aligned to that strategic plan around the goals of equity, high quality instruction, and students feeling safe and a sense of well-being in our schools. So what we wanted to do was have a moment to highlight each of the different buildings or areas that we have been working in. And also let you know that Trent has been working with the administrators at each building to create a video that highlights the growth over this time period towards that strategic plan.
So student. You're welcome to say, you're always welcome to say, but just want to make sure that you have that. Like, if you'd like to. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a good night. What I had planned on doing was allowing each administrator to kind of talk a little bit about some of the highlights from the year that align to the work that we've done. However, Heston and Joe, who are both online, have been texting me saying that they're really struggling with the technology. It's not working very well. So they've texted me some things that they would like me to highlight. And then if you have additional questions. To do that. So I'm actually going to start with, and you can find these in your documents online. They do not print well. So we didn't even get into printing them because they're even confusing to try to identify where things are. So with that, let me grab the lens. All right, so Goodwin had spent a lot of time working with PDSA cycles. Plan, do, study, and then act. So it's a cycle of having teachers try different strategies, coming back, looking at the data from those strategies, identifying which strategies are working well, and then scaling that across the school. And an area of need at Goodwin, as well as an area of growth for Goodwin this year has been amongst the ML students in their language acquisition and ability to participate in our classes and grow along with the rest of our students. Some of this data is still in the process of being collected. As at the end of the year, we'll be collecting additional reading data. Anybody have any questions about the Goodwin information? And if you are on the online document, it's all the way over where it says, it is really challenging to try to see the whole thing in one piece, but this is a progress review under 5.6. Don't even know if Heston was able to stay on.
It looks like Hessa and Joe, maybe, I don't know if they left to try to get back in or if they got kicked out, but
They've both been texting me.
Yeah, there's-
We can't hear, we can't talk. Did you want to add anything about the one, Greg?
Yeah, so one thing with this document, it is going through some revisions and I have been working with CBRO, but also in communication with our communication guy. We have been looking at a better way to communicate our results out, so this will look a lot cleaner next year. Well, we'll still have a version of this document living behind it. We realized after the March board meeting that there was something that needs to be in between here. Yeah, so that is in the work for this, so I do want to point that out.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Okay. All right, so I'll move on to the middle school then. I'm easy because I'm here. So we've done a lot of work as well with high quality instruction with a particular focus in growing all students' literacy skills, but with a particular zooming in on our multilingual students as well as our special education students. We've done that through a variety of ways. One of the things that we've done this year is using tuning protocols where teachers get together and share lesson plan ideas. That included year to support our multilingual students, as well as accommodations and modifications that might need to be made depending on a student's IEP for special education students. And within that protocol, teachers share feedback with each other and improve their lesson plans to then teach in classrooms. Another piece of this has been our continued use of learning targets to give students ownership and understanding of where they're going in the learning process. The last 2 walkthroughs we've done this year, 100% of the classrooms that we went into had learning targets posted somewhere in that classroom, and students are able to talk to us about what those learning targets are. We also had a our vocabulary scores this year. This was one of the areas that we focused in on with our PDSA cycles. Teachers across the school were focused on different strategies of teaching vocabulary, and across the board, we saw an increase for all students, but a greater increase for our special education students and our ML students in general, if we look at each grade level. And then we've been able to share those strategies with everybody else across the building when we found something that was successful. So it's rather a collaborative learning style, not just for the students, but for the staff as well. This year we found we were able to move 32% of our ML students up a full level on our last to read, write, listen, and speak in English. So that's a lot of growth. I'm saying that all correctly, right? All right. In addition to that, we've had a lot of professional development around those pieces, and we've looked for those strategies in classrooms as we've walked around. So not just looking for learning targets, but looking for strategies to support multilingual or special education students. And in our last walkthrough, we saw 94% of the classrooms, it was very evident that there were strategies being used in relation to the learning targets. In addition to that, this year, one of the other things we wanted to do was make sure that we were making decisions about particularly our multilingual students. So I've talked about this several times this year of introducing an intake process as well as an individual learning plan for our multilingual students. We piloted that across all 3 buildings with teacher, guidance counselor, as well as our secretaries having input to what information is going to be important for us supporting those students. We gathered feedback from the families that all felt that that was a valuable exercise to go through, and that they felt that their opinions and voices were heard by the staff there, and that the staff really cared very much about the So we've done that across all 3 buildings. We've actually were able to do it with 5 students this year. And then the staff feedback was also very positive, feeling that the forms were helpful and the process was helpful to better understand the students, what their needs were. And they did have some feedback, which we then used to revise the forms, and those are now available to all 3 buildings in their somewhat final form, because they're always in the opportunity to adjust them and change them as we need to. We conducted 2 instructional rounds this year, which involves teachers going into classrooms to look at a particular problem of practice. And in this particular case, and we included students in on those rounds, so they helped give us feedback to what they were seeing in the classroom and what they thought was effective for assisting those students. In addition to that, we also wanted to support students' well-being and feeling of being included and belonging within the schools. So that's really for all students. So we had 7 different advisory lessons this year, most of which were based on the idea of inclusion. We also did some lunch bunch groups with our multilingual students to help them gain some friends of students who already had lived here for a little while. So building some. We also continue with our PBIS program this year, where we reinforce positive expectations. And we have seen a drop since COVID over time with our behavior data, quite a significant drop. I would say 2 years ago. This year, even from that point, which was much lower, we've declined another almost 30% in our behavior referrals from last year to this year. So we've had a lot of improvement, I would say, across the board with our behaviors, and students are reporting that they feel that they belong and are included. We did some focus groups, and even our multilingual students, over 90% said that they felt like they belong. Any questions about the notes?
Good question.
Yes.
So one, I was wondering, when you brought parents in, did you
Mhm.
need to have interpreters for them?
We did. So I would love to eventually get to a point where we can use some of the technology for certain pieces of that, but the parents definitely, when we got feedback from them, said that they liked having someone that spoke their
Right,
language.
right.
So I think there's 2 pieces to that. We want them to feel comfortable, but we also want to make sure that our staff that don't necessarily speak the other language can also interact with families, and that families feel that they can interact with our be a middle. Nowadays, even with ThrillShare that we recently put into place, it will translate messages back and forth. Google Translate will translate messages easily for parents and back to teachers as well. So we put in place, I think, a lot of different pieces to that. So we want to make sure that we don't disconnect the teachers from the.
Right, because sometimes the Google
families.
Translate, does it in such fashion that some families don't really understand, so you're dealing with.
Yes, and we do have some families that we don't necessarily have a translator for, because if they speak a language that we don't have anybody who speaks that language, that makes it challenging as well. So we do have some other options for that as well, but thankful to have been invited in and to be able to talk about their children and what they're seeing with their kids.
And then the learning targets, you said the students have their own learning target.
Well, each class has their own learning target. In some classes, students have individualized learning targets. Sometimes, particularly, I'm thinking like in the special education classrooms, they have individualized learning targets. Students may have a variety of learning targets for a unit and may be choosing which learning targets they need to work on based on where they are with that particular skill or
That's
area.
like goals and objectives, but now there's.
You got it. It's like that, but it's written in a way that's kid friendly, and it's a cognitive opportunity to think, where am I in relation to this and what do I need to do next? And that's really been a big push over the last 6 years at the school, is to help them own that learning process.
Whether they've achieved it or not.
I'm sorry.
Whether they've achieved it, got to a place where they've achieved it.
Well, and it depends on the standard. You mean, yes. So they have to go through each one and kind of identify that, but it helps. I'm thinking of one particular math classroom where the students have different assessments throughout formative assessments, and then she's able to say, this is where you are with these different learning targets, and then before they get to the final test, they have the opportunity to the different areas that they might still be struggling with. Any other questions regarding the middle school? Okay, we're gonna move on to the high school, and I apologize that I'm playing up my phone, but I wanted to make sure that any of the things that Joe said, since he can't speak with the piece here. So some of the things that Joe wanted me to talk about was the fact that they've been developing authentic pathways with different businesses for the students to be able to have experiences with internships and opportunities to explore careers. You heard tonight a little bit about the EB program, that's one. Different trades as well. School climate results, which we have just recently sent out that survey. So right now that data is being compiled. They are working on their tier 1 strategies within the classroom. So that's basic instruction for all students to make sure that everyone is meeting those standards. And they have made an impact in their chronic absenteeism rate that has fallen this year as well, with some direct programs with teachers or staff members meeting with particular kids on a regular basis and implementing different meetings with families to make sure that all the needs of the child are being met as much as we can to support the family. School to the building. Yes.
Do you feel like that's true for the other schools, that the absenteeism is getting better? Would you say it's noticeably better, the same, or noticeably?
I would say for the middle school, I think it's probably a little bit better, but not hugely. We've gone through a similar process where we have meetings with families once we get to a certain point to make sure that any needs might be identified. Sometimes there's not necessarily a need, but there's a choice being made by a family to go or be in a different location. Sometimes that's family related. That they may have family that they want to go see or so forth that might not be in the area. So we're continue to work on that, but it's not to where we would like to see it.
But not worse.
No, it's not worse. Any other questions or comments about high school? Sorry, don't talk as much about it. All right, student services.
So I don't have nearly as much to say as Kristen. And coming up with some good strategies for regular or for our special education teachers to look at learning targets and incorporate 21st century skills into the development of IEP goals and objectives. That's a bulk of our work. And most of that is happening as we speak right now. So I would say that 70% of our IEPs are finalized. We moved, I don't know if you guys remember this, but we moved from a calendar year IEP system, IEPs that start in September and end in June. We moved to align with best practice in the state to be an anniversary date plan. So IEPs are rolling. IEPs start in January, they end in June. So the data for my original goal is a little bit off. I'll have better data at the end of the school year when when all IEPs are finalized. IEPs are finalized. Everybody has to have a final IEP by the end of the school year. So, but there's been some exciting things. We have really increased some student sense of belonging by doing, really focusing on unified sports and unified flex at the high school. I think that we've made some really great accomplishments in collaborative conversations around meaningful inclusion for students with disabilities. And what I mean by meaningful inclusion is just not just inclusion for inclusion. Students can feel confident when they are in the classroom so that they can be active participants with the rest of their peers. So again, we really worked on that, particularly with our students with significant needs. And that's been really positive for the school community. I don't know if there's any other questions you guys have specifically about the stuff we worked on, but it was really great. I mean, it's my first year. So it was really great to get to know the team and really great to know people's strengths and concern areas and try to support and highlight. I'm definitely going to go about goal setting differently next year, but I was kind of blind when I started. But I will have good time with non-disabled people. So I'm looking forward to that.
I have a question related to that new rolling IEPs, and maybe it's too soon to tell. Do you notice that is, are you seeing improved results, or are you feeling like it's a good fit, like it truly is a best practice, or is it too early to tell?
It truly is the best practice if it's done really well. And I think we are getting to that point. I think the original hesitation is, teachers are writing goals not only for the remainder of this year, but then like to the start of next year. And you're handing IEPs off to your colleagues, right? So I think that we're really using our department time to talk the targets, and these are the 21st century skills that we want these guys to, or these students to have. How do we make that meaningful in both 9th and 10th grade, or 2nd and 3rd grade? So it requires a little bit more,
right?
that's the trickiest part. But within the school, I think it's actually added to some good collaboration time with teachers, which I think is helpful. We often operate in our silos, and in the world of special education, we do have to pass students from year to year. I'm sure everybody knows the goals and objectives. That's been great.
That's nice.
For Sarah.
Get a chance to ask it, how do you feel about the art program for your special education students?
I cannot weigh in on that just yet. We have not developed goals and objectives really targeting the art program. That's something that I'm gonna wait on until there's full implementation. Most of our students that are getting direct reading instruction are getting something totally separate. They're getting ARC in the regular education classroom, but when they are pulled out, or if they are getting that individualized instruction, it looks very, very different than the ARC program. We would be using that as a basis for instruction. Teaching and reach. Working on and coding and decoding at the elementary levels for these students.
All right, Dr. Fletcher, I'll let you go next.
As if you didn't have enough. So we had two areas that we were focused on this year. One was around curriculum, the other high quality instruction. A lot of the work that we did really centered curriculum. We were looking, because we also had another state mandate that all of our curriculum, in terms of the goals. In terms of the goals as well. And that if any of our families wanting to look at a particular resource, that they have access to it. So part of the work that myself and the IIT, as well as our teachers, took on was ensuring that the goals and objectives that we had listed inside of our curriculum actually matched the resources that we're using, that we also had common language and common documents. So it had a nice clean look to it, but also anyone accessing could see like, oh, here's a unit, here's the goals, here's what they're going to be focused on, here's those topics. So I have to then, because they did a masterful job of helping to communicate and lead that work inside their departments. We were able to complete that goal, as well as looking at the resources that we do have, seeing if there's any gaps or needs that we have to really move forward with high quality instruction in the classroom. So we really want to tackle the idea that we have a high quality curriculum that the board has already approved in place. All the resources are accessible. That way, if we are looking at any retirements or teachers coming in to fill vacant positions, creating something on their own. So we were able to really tackle that idea and make all of those resources available, and that will be changing out the curriculum notebook that currently exists on our website to the unit scope and sequence documents that will be on our website and available to any stakeholder looking for it. All of that set us in a great position to do a lot of survey data work and seeing what are some of the goals that our teachers are looking to work on with respect around. So when we're talking about learning target or content goals that students should be focused on, that helps them get to goal setting and next steps. We're talking about application of learning or making thinking visible. We have different tactics that students are actually working towards and teachers are utilizing to help students get to those goals. So we started surveying our teachers through departments And I believe Goodwin is being surveyed next week at their last department meeting and trying to set the stage for the next time that I come and speak to you all about the new evaluation. A lot of hoops, and we're taking it step by step.
Cree has been very, very busy. All right, and I have the last one for athletics, which is probably the thing I'm least qualified to talk about. So I will do the update for Brennan. He had 2 different sports events happening this evening at the same time, so he wasn't able to join us. But it looks like at this point at the high school for the spring, sports, 196 students are participating and 80 students at the middle school are participating in spring sports. Recently, one of the students did a capstone project, maybe multiple projects. Programs that are available to get more kids involved even, not just at the high school, but at the middle school as well. There was 2 captain council meetings and the captains attended a leadership conference at Lime High School to learn some of those leadership skills. And at Goodwin, they've been asking the kids through class discussion about what kind of PE activities they like to increase engagement and get kids really involved in that process at the elementary school. Any questions about that? Okay. That is all of the updates for the strategic plan. Thank you, everybody.
And I think we've talked about this a little bit, we touched upon this a little bit as to how we communicate to the board, the updates and kind of digest it down. I think the next level maybe is potentially how we get this out to parents and stakeholders in the community in a digestible format. There's so much work that's being done and we do, like, there's so much thought that goes into the strategic plan and so many things are being actioned on the strategic plan that how we communicate that out is, I know it's a massive undertaking, but like just to be thinking about how we might think through that per audience. And I know Jen is working on that too, but I just want to reinforce that because if parents, for example, this recording, which I would love to say that there's 1,000, you know, that are just waiting, chomping at the bit to watch this recording, but I know that that's probably not the case. Like, how do we actually demonstrate movement to the strategic plan within the district?
Even if with simple, I think
That's
bullet
what I'm
points,
saying.
just bullet points, just quick.
Yeah.
You know, without a whole lot of.
Trent was like, oh, yeah.
So last year, as part of our public relations. Highlighted classroom examples of what was being done in each building and in each department for toward the goals for our strategic plan. So there were links included that went to videos. One of them was plaque sitting on this wall. But you know, it went to rubrics, student examples of work. My plan was to do that again this year. It's too much time. It's a lot of time for me to do by myself. And it kind of fell by the wayside once plans were set in motion for 3 superintendents in 1 academic year. And the thing, and this has kind of been a recurring theme for the board this year is, oh, we'd love to hear more about this. We'd love to see more of this and this and this. Anytime anything happens that involves the superintendent of schools, my PR work gets pushed to the back burner, often to not be picked up again. So there's at one point we were doing the ML newsletter, and that was a great communication piece and something I really enjoyed doing. And I just don't have the time to manage it. I don't have the time to do that kind of thing. And I definitely hear the board in terms of, oh, we want to see this, we want to see this. We have, obviously I work in collaboration with the DLT and very closely with the superintendent of schools. And when the superintendent of schools can free me up to do those things, I'm happy to go do them. I'm currently working on the strategic plan wrap-up video for this year. But I mean, let's be realistic about what the next year is gonna look like. It's gonna be me working with our new first-time superintendent who's gonna need me than the public relations work that I do. And in terms of people who are spending all of their time focusing on public relations, it's me as often as I can, which is, goes back to a lot of different things. And so that's definitely a conversation I'd love to have be ongoing between, the board and what you guys want to see. To make those things happen or figure out ways to make those resources available.
And Trent, you probably have access to some metrics around how many people access, like, because you put a lot of work into that,
Sure.
that resources online. And, you want to make sure that that you're reaping the return on that investment of time. So you could probably get some of that. How many parents are accessing that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we have, I try to be as efficient as I can be in terms of our communication tools. But because of the situation I just described, a lot of our check in on it.
Yeah, right, so you can't
periodically.
even run the metrics.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's not that it's not that I can't, it's not that I don't look at them. Whenever I report to you guys on, hey, this is who's utilizing our website, and how they're utilizing it, I can tell you anecdotally. We have just shy of 1,000 people who have downloaded the Old Saybrook Public Schools app. How are they engaging with that app? I don't know, I haven't been able to do the legwork to find that out.
I think it may be worthwhile to like circle back on it. I hear you completely, Trent, like, and especially for this year, in transition, superintendents and all those other things. I think the question more then becomes like, are there additional resources or other things that you might need within this year to help to support that work, or even like in a standard year when everything's great and
Yeah.
we're normalized, like, do we have what we need, or do we understand like the quick hits maybe that are the most important to communicate to parents and the like.
Yes, that's really great feedback, Trent. So thank you for that. I don't think, it's easy for us to be like, oh, we need this and we need that. And, and we lose sight of, the like. We often refer to the public relations committee, which I understand is a group of parents that's not gonna take anything off your plate, really. But how often does that group meet?
So usually in a normal year, they've met monthly.
Okay.
We go into every public relations committee year saying. What I'm saying to you now is the public relations committee is not an action committee. They're more of a feedback committee and a way for us to disseminate information to a larger public. We work together. An idea. Implementing them, it's 100% on me.
Yeah.
So that's, I hate to say it keeps coming back to that, but it does, and we've actually been lucky because Jan had a longevity that is outside the norm for a superintendent of schools. And so after 2 or 3 years with Jan, I was able to start working more and more independently every single year. And by the last couple of years, Jan and I just had our process down so well that we could get. And just now and then as needed, but I'd be off doing my thing, she'd be off doing her thing. That is not gonna be the situation for at least the next year and a half. So to answer your question, normally the public relations committee would meet monthly. As soon as Krista, no, sorry, I should say a few weeks before Krista took over as interim, I had to suspend meetings because the project that we were working on, which was to potentially look to develop a communication survey so that we could start to collect some data about the tools and how people are pretty quickly that was just not gonna happen. So I have all the information that we got started. When I have a chance to kind of kick things off again, we won't be starting from scratch in that sense. I do a lot of research on my own independently and keep those things and, try to keep up with best practices and stuff. But, this is a hat that I love to wear. I just don't get to wear it as much as I want, especially right now. But, my number one priority was making sure that Krista was gonna be successful. And now my number one priority is gonna be making sure that Krista was gonna be successful now. That successful and and, just making sure that they have everything that they need. And that's so unpredictable right now that, Chris and I are gonna spend a great deal of time just getting used to each other, so.
I think it's a fair point. We can kind of circle back on it, but I do appreciate the feedback and the honesty there, Trent.
Yeah,
about, like where we're sitting, so.
Yeah, I've always tried, I've always strived to give you guys everything that you've asked
Yeah.
for and everything that you want. And especially on my responsibilities to you as the secretary and superintendent. District and, it's really hard to have a great project and a great idea. And then the next year being asked to do the next thing and know at some point I've got to pick between this thing and this thing. And we never really get an opportunity to do what you said, which is, hey, this was great. People loved it, but how much did they love it? How are they utilizing it? We never get to go back and do that evaluation piece because I'm so quick to have to jump to the next thing.
Okay.
So that's my feedback for you and obviously, I think we're all on the same page in saying that making sure our superintendents are successful is the number one priority right now.
Of course, okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, so we'll move on to the next item. I know we're going into the meeting. We spent some good topic time on curriculum and updates, but we'll make sure that we're continuing to progress, so.
Okay.
We'll move into the next one.
Great, so the next item was to switch over the deposit account resolution with Essex Savings Bank, so. I was currently in that role as well as Pam, so Pam will stay in that, but we with Essex Savings Bank. So we have the
long motion here. I'll make a motion, resolve that a checking account in the name of this partnership association be continued with Essex Savings Bank and that checks, drafts, notes, and all orders for payment of money drawn to the order of any person, firm or corporation whatsoever, except as this right may be limited below from said, who wrote this?
It's in savings bank.
Okay, from said account or drawn on another account to be deposited in said account shall be signed or endorsed as the case may be by the following persons in the manner of a story administrator.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion
May I ask a question?
by the discussion master.
Does a date have to be associated with that motion? That's what I was wondering, like effective.
Well, I think it's on our minutes for today, and that's what's given to the bank, I believe. So I think the date is on the minutes.
Yeah, they're gonna, I believe they require the signed minutes, but they also require the,
And I
they have a
say-
form
Right.
that we have to
And I
fill out,
sign-
which I believe,
I have to sign something down here, so.
yeah, so, I think the effective date is on the form that we have to submit with the signed minutes.
Okay, and that'll be 5/21.
Of course. All right, so we have the motion and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, and similarly, we need to authorize Mr. Dresnick to be our authorized user with the child nutrition program through the federal government that requires to have authorized representatives here. So similarly, we would need it.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
The insurance cooperative that we are part of, Eastern Connecticut Health and Medical Cooperative, has two representatives from Old Saybrook. Pam serves as one. I have currently been serving as the other. We need to switch that over to Chris Dresnick.
Make that motion to appoint Chris Dresnick as the district's Eastern Connecticut Health and Medical Cooperative.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Eileen. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, next is just an update around another donation that we received. Anything over? The Old Saybrook Rotary Club donated $2,000 to offset stipend costs associated with work performed by our teacher Amber Sherber through the Interact Club, which is a junior division of the Rotary Club, because There's multiple towns involved with this, Old Lyme, Westbrook, and Old Saybrook. They contribute to that stipend. So this is just for your information.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to her. For her.
Yes.
For the donation. Okay, with that, we can let our administrators go. We're going to be going into, executive session. Discussing employee medical insurance. I will invite Dr. Buckman in, as well as Pam. I'll make the motion. I'll second. Moved by Karen, seconded by Jane, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll be moving in. We'll
We're back.
Okay, so it is now 8:48. We're coming back into open session for the purposes of discussing action items and potential action on the employee medical insurance discussed in executive session. And so with that, Karen, I will ask you.
Yeah,
to
I'm gonna
discuss and then-
I'm gonna make a motion with Pam's assistance to make a motion to accept the year's union revising the board's contribution to the deductions, and give me the dollar amount.
The contribution to the HSA plans for single would increase to $800 and for family would increase to $1,600.
Second. Sorry, who was that second?
Any further discussion? Just noted that these were vetted and discussed during the personnel committees outside as well and in compliance with some of the plan changes that are required. Yep. Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposed MOU with the administration's union. Revising the board's contribution to the deductions that the HSA deductions, Pam, and the amounts.
And the HSA contributions to $800.
Second.
Seconded by Steve. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
I'd like to make. I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposed MOU with any other letters of employment. Employees revising the board's contribution to the HSA deductions, and that was.
From to 800 to 1,600. And I think for this one, you just want to clarify for any other letters of employment currently. A $1,500/$3,000 high deductible plan, that the contributions will increase to $800 and $1,600. I don't want to inadvertently affect other plans.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
so the motion on the floor.
Second.
Thank you, Steve, is a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. You have your reminders here, and then we'll just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Steve. We need a second. Second. Second, Eileen, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.